Hi everyone, welcome to my board and boat store here on the north coast of Ireland. I keep all my surfboards here, all my boats that I've used in big wave surfing over the past. There's probably boards here from 25, 30 years ago. So yeah, I'm going to take you on a little tour today. I'm going to show you how I came to understand what I needed as a big wave surfer coming from Ireland. What I thought I needed, and the knowledge and experience I gained, which taught me how to, to really know what I actually did need out there in the water, to be able to surf these big waves in, conditions that were never surfed in before here in Ireland. So you'll see boards that are from the paddling sort of genre, which are like the big, massive, thick, long surfboards. You'll also see tow boards, which are in the second half of this film. So you can skip to the end if you want to just watch tow boards. But if you're an aspiring big wave surfer watching this, I personally believe that you should spend your time learning how to paddle into these waves. That's where you really learn your craft. You learn about the ocean, you learn about yourself. You have to put yourself in a tiny little window of opportunity out there in order to catch these massive waves. And you don't learn that tow surfing, you learn that through using paddle power alone. If you want to get into tow surfing, you can do that down the line. But in my personal opinion, learn how to paddle into the waves first. Okay, let's go. So I'm just trying to get here. So this is a 9.6. Let's see if we can set this up here. So much stuff in this place. So yeah, I had 6 of these boards made. Let's see if I can get any more. Oops. Boards everywhere here. Ugh. What's that one? Also 9.6. Yeah, so I just want to show you these boards. Back whenever I started getting into big wave surfing, there were none of these kind of boards in Ireland. No big wave boards. Certainly not that I knew of, anyway. Yeah, and I'd been interested in big wave surfing since I was 13, and I used to sit and watch VHS tapes of the guys surfing at Mavericks in California, and it was amazing to me. I was hooked on what those guys were doing out there. They were like, I was a little 13-year-old kid here in the north coast of Ireland, and seeing these big burly men going out off the coast of California in these like big, dark, heavy, scary waves really inspired me. And yes, of course, I was also inspired by the guys in Hawaii. Of course, seeing the big waves there as well. But it was in particular the guys at Mavericks really sort of, I don't know, I just found it very inspiring, inspirational. They were like, wearing big, thick wetsuits, which is what I was used to as well. And they were out in what looked like very similar conditions to what we have here in Ireland. So yeah, it was kind of always in my mind since I was a young kid that it was going to pursue bigger and bigger waves, and I think that's kind of just natural in all sorts of pursuits and sport. You kind of want to go from small to big, and that's kind of where it always was for me. I always wanted to be chasing a slightly bigger wave than maybe I did the day before or the previous swell. So anyway, yeah. So like I've got like I'm not even joking. I think I've got 56 surfboards at the minute, and they're not all here. Most of them are here. There's some scattered in various places in the west coast, some here in the north coast, some in Europe. They're all over the place, but I have got a few here that are significant. I'm going to show you them and explain how I got to using these boards in particular. As a teenager, I was always like using second-hand surfboards that I found in local surf shops. We did have a couple of surf shops here in Ireland at the time. I think there's quite a few more now. I would have surfed the biggest waves I could on those boards, over the years. And it wasn't that I was particularly trying to be a big wave surfer kind of thing. I just wanted to surf bigger waves, and that required bigger boards. And I was always a slightly bigger kid than most. So it was quite difficult to find the kind of board that I wanted or needed maybe for the size I was and the size of waves I wanted to surf. And here in Ireland, we didn't really have that many surfboard shapers. Like there's always been somebody shaping surfboards here in Ireland, but there wasn't very many. And I found getting surfboards quite difficult. Yeah, and it's funny because like being from this country, seeing the surfers in Hawaii and California was really inspirational in that we didn't have that surfing here. We didn't have high performance small wave surfing, let alone big wave surfing. So I was very, very much into looking at the magazines like Surfer Magazine, Surfing Magazine, and the videos that we could have sourced at the time in the 90s and the early noughties. Yeah, they were something that really sort of I studied a lot, and I looked at the boards and I looked at what they did and how the guys did the thing, and I really studied it. Probably something similar to what you could do nowadays with the internet, and you could pretty much Google everything. So okay, so fast forward to I was 22, and I was sitting in my garden with my dad on a sunny evening. It was July, and I was talking about how I wanted to try and surf bigger waves, like proper big waves, like what the guys have in California and Mavericks, and other parts of the world. And I remember sitting talking about it, and he was like, "You can do this, son. You can do this. Don't worry about your mother. I'll talk to her, about it." Anyway, we just chatted about it for a while, and he was like, you have to train properly for it, and you're fit and you're strong, and you can do this. So anyway, we just chatted about it. Never really thought much of it, and tragically, the next day, my father died, and it turned out to be that the last conversation I had was about me wanting to surf big waves, in particular at Mavericks in California. And so as you can imagine, the fuel to the fire was there, and it probably spurred me on more than I realized at the time to really sort of pursue big wave surfing. And that's kind of what I did. I took it from that point and really went for it. What I did to pursue this was I wanted to make contact with guys who were in other parts of the world and try and find out about the kind of boards I needed. But I literally didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody. And I had been kind of all over the world surfing. I was very lucky. I traveled all over the world as a teenager. But what I did do was I contacted my friend Emmett O'Doherty, who is from Bundoran on the west coast of Ireland. And he had actually just recently been in contact with a Californian surfer, a longboarder, who was able to put us in contact with two of the early surfers from Mavericks, Mike Gerhardt and Sarah Gerhardt. So basically what we did was we contacted them and we planned a trip to go out to Mavericks in December of that year. So that gave us just under 6 months of training and to get the right boards. And I was very fortunate. As a teenager, I was sponsored by a company called Circle One, who in their own right were pioneers of surfing in the British Isles. Jeff Townsley in particular was one of the early surfboard shapers before he got into making wetsuits as well. So I had them on board for a long time, and some of those guys in there still remain friends of mine to this day. So anyway, I spoke to Jeff, spoke to Pete in there, and we got 6 boards made. And the idea was that they wanted to test out the construction of the boards they were making at the time, because they were sort of stepping up their board building process, and I wanted to pursue big wave surfing. So the combination was kind of perfect, and we got 6 boards made. We got 2 9/6s, I think, these are them. And we got 2 8/6s, and I think we might have had 9/0s as well. There were 6 anyway. I've got 2 here, and they're both fairly badly beaten up now. I think Emmett and me broke one in California, and maybe another one somewhere. Not 100% certain, but anyway, we loved these boards. They were great, and they were great for surfing big waves. They were great for training. Once we got out to California, we surfed some of the sort of spots out there that the guys would have used as training grounds on these boards, and we loved them. They were great, but they weren't suitable for Mavericks, and thankfully Mike and Sarah Gerhardt were aware of that, and they were able to help us with getting the right equipment. Now we were there for a month, and they were able to supply me with I'll find it here in a second. The difference between this board, which is a 9/6, you can see how thin it is. And I was quite a bit lighter than I am now. This is like 20 odd years ago. The difference between Mike's board and these boards is that it was very, very heavy. Now, I'll just take you with me here. Here, take it with me and show you this board. That's not it. We're nearly out. There we go. You look here. This is the 10-footer that Mike sorted me with in California, and the difference between this and the one over there, which I just showed you, is that it's much thinner, or sorry, much thicker. This one's much thicker and much heavier. It was made by Pearson Arrow, Santa Cruz, California, by Bob Pearson, and that's one of the most important things you can have with surfboards is getting them made by somebody local and who knows the location that you're going to be surfing. And that's what we didn't really have that here in Ireland at that point in time in terms of big wave surfing. So anyway, that's the board I surfed at Mavericks, and Emmett was actually riding one of Sarah's 11.4s. So like, these were the biggest boards we'd ever seen. We'd never seen anything like this before, except on the videos and in the magazines. And so it was quite surreal to be riding these big wave boards out at Mavericks. But what that actually did was, I brought this board home, and the trip really inspired me to really pursue big wave riding here in Ireland. Like, we didn't really know big waves existed here at the time. Of course, we all knew big wild waves existed here, but we didn't really know that they were rideable at that point. So this board was great. It allowed me to surf Mavericks, which I had dreamt about since I was 13. And going out there and meeting some of the guys that had inspired me was incredible. And to ride one of their boards was like amazing. But it was even better than that, in that I was able to bring this board back and use it as a template to create boards that would suit the waves here as well. Because this is what obviously Bob Pearson and Jeff Clark and the various guys out at Mavericks did for their wave. They were able to create equipment as time went on. They realized what they needed, and they developed their equipment suitable for that location. And that's what I was able to do with Mike's board. So yeah, so I brought it back and took it to Circle One, and they templated it, and we made some adjustments to suit me at my size that I was at the time, and made them much heavier, much more like Mike's board. And we made, let me see if we got them here. Yeah, well, there's one. Is that one? Yeah, there's one there. This is the 9.0 version, so I've got a 9 foot version. Man, oh, this is much heavier than the first one. First 6. That was a 9 footer. I haven't actually ridden that board that often. I just didn't find the days that really suited it. I have ridden it a few times, but not in anything that I would say was significant. I'm not going to take all these boards down, but there's an 8.6 version up there, and there's a 7.6 version. So basically, I had boards made that were going to be kind of the next stage on. So I'm banging my head on all these surfboards here. Kind of, oops. I had boards made, templated from Mike's board to suit the waves here in Ireland, and they were heavier and they were stronger, and they were just a bit more refined than the original 6 I had made for going to California in the first place. So yeah, what I did was the whole thing for me then was like I had been surfing slightly bigger waves, gradually bigger and bigger waves as I grew up, but I wanted to pursue really big waves. Like I've been riding at Mavericks, or like I'd seen all the other guys riding Mavericks. So I created a little project, and I called it Project Red. As I'm sure you're aware, throughout the years you see a lot of swells go by, and surf most of them, and a lot of big days go by, and you see spots off the shore, and always breaking out at sea, and you always wonder if you had a boat, if you had the ability, the skills. Maybe there's a lot of potential there for big wave riding, and that ongoing thing just sort of continued through my surfing career and life so far, and that's where we are today. So what I wanted to do now was I wanted to be in Ireland and surf these big wild waves that we get here. That was what I was really interested in. I love the wild weather we get and the wild storms, and to try and ride these waves, to go out off the coast in search of big wave spots. It was just so adventurous, and I was really excited about it. Yeah, it was just I was full of the energy to really pursue this now. So what I did was I went to a map shop which we have here just outside Belfast in the town called Bangor, and I basically raided their shop and took all the ocean charts that would show me the seabed from basically Ballycastle on the north coast of Ireland all the way around, right the way down into Donegal Bay. That was where I was really going to focus because it was relatively close to where I live, and I realised that I could put the time and energy into drive into these places and go and looking for big wave spots. So what I did was I was able to get the ocean charts for the seabed at Mavericks from a friend of mine in the University of Ulster who had access to digital charts online, or not online, just it's some sort of a package at the time. Because we didn't have the internet wasn't really a thing that we could use then to search this out. Like, I wasn't able to Google board dimensions or Google big wave spots. It didn't really exist. I don't even think YouTube was around anything. This is like the very early 2000s. So everything was just based on what I'd seen in magazines, videos, and then going to California. Yeah, so what I did was I basically used the charts showing the ocean bed here, all around the coast, combined it with my friend's information from the university, and I basically ringed on the chart. And I'll show you a picture, I'll drop it in here somewhere, of some of the charts I used and how battered they are now. They've been out at sea so many days. Basically what I did was I ringed them and wrote on bits of paper what I thought the best conditions would be for these sort of locations that looked like they might have big wave spots. And I compared them to the seabed at Mavericks, where the depth would rise from very deep at sea to shallower, and then hit a big rock ledge. So that's the kind of thing I looked for. I looked for that abruptness in the difference of the depth to, basically the the deep, deep sea to the shallow rises. Yeah, and many of these waves were offshore, like far offshore, farther than I'd ever been offshore. So what I did was I borrowed some money, and a friend of our family was selling a rib, a rigid inflatable boat. So I basically said to him, look, I'll buy the boat from you. Because he was a member of the family, or not a member of the family, he was a friend of the family. I kind of trusted that the boat would have been in good shape and the engine would have been good. So I didn't have the money to go and buy another engine as a backup. I was going out to sea on one engine, which kind of filled me with a bit of concern. But bought the boat and off I went, and it was amazing. Like going out off the coast with my friend Gareth at the time. He would have driven the boat for me. We would have gone out. I would have these boards in the boat, and we would have gone out to some of these locations to check them out. Some of them I surfed, some of them I haven't surfed yet. Some of them I surfed at the time and several times since. Some of them are still in here, and I'm waiting for the day to do it. Yeah, and at various other times, if Gareth couldn't make it, somebody else would have driven the boat. My friend Baz and my friend Ben from Cornwall came over. He would have driven the boat for me too. So that's what I did. I went out and searched for these waves all around the coast, and it was an amazing time to be out on boards that were being built specifically for these waves that, to get me onto these things out in the open ocean. It was just like, it was magical. It was magical going out there in the middle of winter off the coast, looking at these outcrops of rock that were probably always just a shipping hazard. And to me, they were like the potential to be like riding these big, scary waves that I'd seen, these like inspirational big wave guys from California doing when, all through my teens. I'm not going to go into like all the detail here, but basically from that point forward, it got pretty intense in that I pursued big wave surfing heavily, and in actual fact, I think it was 2005 maybe, or 2005 or 4, the first big wave surfing contest in Ireland was held, and it was one of those kind of competitions where you would send a photograph in of you riding a wave, and if it was the biggest one, then you would win. It was sent in over the winter kind of thing, and it's called the Manannan Big Wave. The Manannan Big Wave Challenge is what it was, and Manannan is the Celtic god of the sea here in Ireland. So it was called the Manannan Big Wave Challenge, and it was ran by a guy called Kieran Clancy from Dublin. And I actually didn't even know this contest was on. I didn't have much interest in that. It wasn't sort of something that I wanted to pursue. Not that I had chosen not to, but it hadn't really entered my mind. And one day here locally in the North Coast, I was out surfing on my own at the beach here at East Strand in Portrush, and it was one of those days back in the mid 2000s where the sandbanks were amazing, and I sound like this old guy now, but it was one of those days where the sandbanks were great, and it was a huge westerly storm, the kind of storms we get regularly that are generally unrideable, but the odd location off the East Strand is tucked into the corner out of the wind, and you can ride some big waves. At the time, I had actually probably ridden much bigger waves than that. I'd been at Mavericks before then. I'd done a lot of stuff, but there'd never been a contest in Ireland that was, going to award somebody or whatever for riding a big wave. Anyway, long story short, I'd been surfing. It was almost dark. It was about 4 o'clock in the evening. It was midwinter. It was maybe December or something. So it was getting dark very early. And my friend Andrew Hill happened to be in the car park and took some pictures of me. And he told me about the competition later on and said, "Look, do you want to enter?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, why not? Just go for it." So we stuck it in anyway, and ended up we won it. And so at that time, that was like the win. That was like winning the first big wave contest in Ireland. And we didn't plan to, we didn't try to, it just happened to be the case. But from then forward, big wave surfing in Ireland really started to pick up, and that the awareness of it became more and more sort of prominent in people's minds. It was there, like it was possible to ride these waves, and not necessarily just here, like all around the island. And as time went on, and I've started to really understand the kind of waves I was riding here, and I was growing as a surfer, and I was getting bigger, and as I was getting older, I began to really understand the kind of boards I needed to be getting built here. And it's funny because I remember at the time getting, I'll get an 8.6, I'll get a 9.0, and I'll get whatever, and it never really felt big enough. No matter what I got, it never really felt big enough. I remember like thinking, this doesn't seem like I've got enough board under me. The waters here are always choppy and wild. It tends to be very, very wild here, even in some of the best, bigger days. We rarely get pure glassy conditions, and so I always kind of felt that I didn't have enough board under me. But as time went on, and I developed as a surfer, and other surfers in Ireland obviously got more into big wave surfing too, so too did the shapers here in Ireland. We started to have surfboard shapers that were getting better too. And one of my friends, Rosie Harkin, from Derry, just up the road here, he made me a few boards. Again, we based them on Mike Gerhardt's 10.0, but by then I had kind of been through quite a few boards, and I was starting to understand what I really needed. And Rosie made me this 9.6 here. Let me see. It's 9.6. It's 9.6. Yeah, this is a 9.6. This is one of the first ones he made me. And then later on, he made me this one here. This one. I'm gonna smash that, aren't I? I'm just going to show you here. It's lying down. This one. And the cool thing about this is one of the cool things about this is that Rosie made me quite a few boards, as did another local guy called Stevie Devlin. And like I've always, as time went on, I kind of always started to learn what I wanted and what I needed. But I'm not the handiest. I'm not the best with my hands in terms of building things and making things. So Stevie and Rosie are far better than I am. So I was able to sort of give my knowledge, and they were able to transfer it into boards for me to ride. And the coolest thing about this is, in my mind, is that the museum here in Belfast, Ulster Museum, actually created what do you call it? An exhibition. That's what it is. They've created an exhibition about surfing in Ireland, and they commissioned Rosie to make a replica of this board here, this 10'8" board of mine that he made me. And the reason being is that out of all the big waves I've ridden, I've probably ridden the most on that board, and it's quite a distinctive board. There's a big X on it, and it's now on display in the museum in Belfast, which is class. Because surfing in Ireland, is still fairly young, although it's very popular now. It's well known of. It's still fairly young. It's still like we're only only getting started. But also, and then I progressed into toe surfing. I realised that the conditions here are so. Right, I've just changed camera here because my battery just died there. So what I was saying there was, I realised that surfing big waves here in Ireland, paddling only, was limited in that we generally have very wild conditions. Even on the best big wave days, we generally have very wild conditions because we're situated so close to the storms that hit us. So paddling, even on the best days, meant missing a lot of the best big waves coming through. So I kind of wanted to add to my collection of stuff and try and surf these waves in another way that the Hawaiians and the Californians were doing, which is toe surfing, obviously. And by that time, I still don't think YouTube was around. I think this was like pre all that. But I'd seen toe surfing in videos and whatever, VHSs and DVDs. I'll actually drop in, I haven't got them here, but I'll drop into this some of the videos and stuff I would have watched. But at that time I was able to contact some of these guys in other parts of the world who were doing this. In fact, two of the pioneers of toe surfing, I actually reached out to them. I got a response from one and I got nothing from the other one. And the response I got from Eric Akaskalian was basically I had asked for, would he have any information on the dimensions that I might need for a tow board, because the tow boards are so much different to these big wave paddle boards. And I'd spent so much time working this out to this point, but I was kind of starting from scratch with the tow board, so I didn't really know what to get. So I reached out to Eric and I asked him, and he sent back a one-liner, and it just said 6-0 by, I can't remember the rest of it, 6-0 by something or other, by something or other. And I was like, oh, okay. But it gave me a starting point. So what I did was I sent this to Circle One and told them what I was doing, and they started to look into building one for me. But in the meantime, I wanted to get going. I wanted to see if I could sort of, get this going myself. And I'm going to try to set this camera down here. Hang on. Let me see. Where can I set this? Yes. All right. Yes, lovely. Hold it. That'll do there. Okay, so so basically I wanted to see if I could create something that would work for me as a tow board. I'd gone and sourced a jet ski, and that was a whole new world, because all of a sudden you needed a partner, and there wasn't very many people that wanted to surf big waves in Ireland, let alone locally. So I started off with my friends, as every big wave surfer probably has done, so I was learning how to use the jet ski in the surf, and my friends at the time, Baz and a few other guys, basically tried to learn how to ride this jet ski in the surf, and understand the throttle, and we had like you'll see on some of the jet skis, well, all the jet skis now, there's a rescue sled. There's some here. I'm not even going to try and find them, but they're here. I thought there was one right there. We didn't have a rescue sled, but we realised that in order to rescue each other, we needed a rescue sled. And I actually had an old kneeboard. I don't know if you know what a kneeboard is. A kneeboard used to get behind whenever we were younger. We would have been as kids on like a board. You would knelt on it and held onto a rope like a water skier behind a boat. And I had one of those, so we tried to adapt that. At the time, my friends Baz and Carl and a few other people tried to adapt that to put it behind the jet ski. Didn't really work. It just kept getting stuck under the back of the jet ski. So we didn't have a rescue sled, and the rope we were using at the time, again, we didn't know, but it was just an ordinary water ski rope. I'll show you what we had. Right. Hang on here. This is actually part of the original water ski rope that I've used now. I just use this for tying down boats and jet skis, but this is what we ended up eventually using, like the guys had in Hawaii and California. But this caused so much trouble. It was getting stuck in the jet ski intake. We lost the ski several times because we ran over the rope. But anyway, that's a different thing. Back to boards. So basically what we did was, right, Baz and I, Baz and my mate, he's from here as well. Again, far handier than I am. So we butchered a surfboard up. So this was actually one of my 6'4" surfboards that I would have used just in regular surf. And what we did was we cut it open with a grinder and set in building site lead, so like lead that you would have in your house, in your roof, in your eaves of your roof, or various other parts of the house. We basically battered it up with a block hammer. I think I've got one here. Anyway, basically we battered it up with a block hammer and set it in here into the board, and so it's actually sitting in here below this square. This is actually wood, which we stuck down top of it with resin, and to give us the straps, we put in 2 angles of metal and tied on ordinary roof rack straps and foam insulation. So now this was actually the prototype it did the job. Having the extra weight was great. The reason for having the extra weight is that
you haven't seen a board like this before. Nice pad in there, good angle, guiding action. You know, it's a quarter inch high.
It was great. The reason for having the extra weight is that with tow surfing, you don't actually need the buoyancy of the board. You need the momentum of the jet ski to place you onto the wave. And if you've got a slightly heavier board, it means you can let go of the rope earlier. So we'd weighed it. I think it's about maybe 8 kgs or something. And yeah, so this was pretty much what I used in the early days of tow surfing here in Ireland. You see, even at the very start, we didn't even really know. We didn't know. Like, do you have your straps tight? Do you have them loose? And my whole theory was I wanted them loose so I could get blown off the board if I get hit by a big wave, and not get stuck in it. But at the same time, if you had them too loose, I realised that you could get your foot put through there and stuck in the board. So all those kind of things were really like a learning process. Probably quite a dangerous one as well. So literally that was what I used at the start, and I've got some footage. I'll try and find and put it in here, of me on that and with it on the ski and stuff. But Circle One actually in the meantime, while I was practicing and learning all this, made me a board, and this was the board. Again, it's like triple glass. It's really heavy, but they didn't put any lead into it. When I got it, I felt it wasn't heavy enough. So Baz and I got the grinder out, some more building site lead, put it in here. Now, at the time, I thought this was great. It'll work well. The board's very heavy. It kind of felt like it was evenly distributed, but it wasn't. What actually happened was that because it was all at the front, it meant that when I got to the bottom of a decent sized wave and I went to turn, the board kind of felt like it was pivoting around the weight. It didn't actually bite very well at the back. Well, that's how I felt. That's how I kind of experienced it anyway. I might be wrong on that, but that was my experience of it. But this was great. Like I'll drop in some clips or pictures of me on this, and like I rode some fairly big waves on this board. Again, it was progression, and there was another couple of boards as well in this mix that I either lost at sea or I lent somebody and haven't got back, or they're lying somewhere else. I don't know, but these are kind of the most significant ones. This was probably the most successful step forward. I think this one was made in about 2006. There's another one somewhere here which has got a totally almost round nose on it. I didn't even surf it, to be honest. It just looked so wrong when I actually got it. I couldn't surf it. It's in here somewhere, or maybe down there somewhere. Anyway, but this one, this was one of the best boards. If you look, it's much more narrow than the other ones I have there. The other ones were more like surfboards. This is much narrower. By this stage, I started to understand what I needed. Same as the big wave guns. I started to understand that I needed to be on something very heavy, very streamlined, and very flat. And yeah, this board was great. I don't surf it now; it's too small for me now. But it's like I didn't have to put any weight into it. We had it weighted up with there's metal dials in here. It's triple glass. It's really, it must be about 10 kgs. This one. So if you've ever seen or read about December the 1st, 2007, that was the day that kind of blew the doors open on Irish big wave surfing, in my opinion. You'll see me. I'm riding this board on it, and it was a giant storm that was coming at the west coast of Ireland, and nobody I knew wanted to ride it. And I was ringing around trying to find somebody, and the first protocol actually was Duncan Scott, but he's a South African, and he was in England at the time. So I was kind of thinking he might not come over, but he did, and he came over, and basically we rode that day, and we were alongside two other surfers. Another guy from England, Gabe Davies, and another Irish surfer, Richie Fitzgerald, and we later found out that it was the biggest recorded swell on the Irish wave boys at that time. You know what? I kind of actually felt at the time that the board was perfect in terms of weight, shape, and dimensions, but I think my feet were still too close together. I realised this time on that with the strap set up, I needed to set my feet 1.5 inches further forward and have a bit more of a Poohman stance. So maybe if you actually look closely, you'll see that in some of the pictures or video. But yeah, this board was a big step forward. And from there, like, I had several boards made. I had a couple made by a guy in Wales, John Purden. Again, he made me some boards whenever I was competing in England. So he knew how I surfed, he knew how big I was, and actually I think we got him here. Yeah, so like we're starting to get really into like getting it dialed, starting to work out what really worked, what was needed, the weight of these boards, the shape of them. Yeah, and even like in this board, this is still the days where I still thought the boards weren't heavy enough, so I actually put more building site lead on them, and I actually stuck these on with silicone simply because I wanted to be able to cut it off and put on more or put on less once it kind of tested it out. But I actually progressed on the other boards by the time I sort of finished surfing this one. But one of the best known surfboards of mine would be one of Rosie's. I mentioned him earlier about some of the big wave boards. Also Stevie Devlin, he made me 12.6 and a 14.2, but one of Rosie's ended up in the Nazare, Portugal Lighthouse. I'm sure you've all heard of Nazare. I was one of the pioneers there back in 2010. And there's an orange board on the wall. I had actually two made at the time. One as a backup, but it's actually in a local bar on the wall. Or I would show you, but it's orange. But also it's got dumbbell weights on it. Like I put little, I think they're 1 or 2 kilograms on the board. There's like I put like a threaded screw hole in the board in 2 locations, so I could change the weight on the deck of the board. And that was kind of what I did in the early days to try and really I just wanted to be able to, because what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to put all the weight in the board and then not be able to adjust it. So I got the boards all made at like 6 or 7 kilograms. They probably were, and then I was able to add and take it off. So the board in Nazare you'll see on the wall, I'll put a video in here, a picture of it. You'll see little dumbbells on it. I was able to unscrew those and put heavier ones on or lighter ones on. So there you go. I'm just gonna say, like, although there's a handful of guys starting to get down here in Australia, we're invited by local guys, Pedro, Pablo, Dino. Those guys, Carlos, they are actually the local guys, the pioneers. They're the ones that had the vision. They're the ones that invited Garrett here, and when we came down, and it's you local guys that all had that vision. You inspired us to come here, and you saw it. You lived here. You know the history, the myths, the legends. You know about the fishermen that died, and all the stuff that happened in this local area. And you guys really, you brought us all here, and thank you very much for that. And this is a very touching tribute for me personally to come here and have this mount on the wall and this historic building. I think it's really good that you're so patriotic about it. You're strong, you're Portuguese, and you're proud of what you've got, and you're literally world leaders in the big wave world. Thank you very much for everything, for inviting me here, for putting me up here, and looking after me, showing me all your big waves, and I've had some of the best experiences in my life here. You should be very proud of what you've got here. So thank you very much.
Tudo para aqui, vamos embora. Double picture. Vamos embora.
No, surfing's so different now. Like we have access to so much information, and like all these boards were all made by hand. They weren't made by machine nowadays. They were made by a CNC machine or finished by a shaper or a glasser or whatever way it is. But nearly all the boards now are like that. But those ones were all made by hand. Surfing's changed, and it's much easier to get things, get information, get boards. But that's how I did it here in Ireland, and yeah, and if it wasn't for all the guys in California that I particularly looked up to and was inspired by, it would have taken me a lot longer to really sort of suss out what I needed here in Ireland. To be honest, like still some of the big days I still go out on boards and I still wonder, is this too big? Is this too small? I don't think you ever really sort of dial it 100%, but I have a serious collection of boards now because I've spent so much time sort of researching it and developing it. So who knows what comes next, but at the minute my smallest tow board is 6.0 and my biggest paddling board is 14.2. And I do actually think there's potential for surfing a bigger board than that. Some of the offshore sea mounts that I surf, it might even be feasible to ride a bigger board. I haven't actually got that 14.2 here, but I'll drop a picture of it in. Yeah. Anyway, there you go. Bye.